Hi, everybody. Oh boy. So, Amber has uploaded a recent video, including a weigh in, where she lost 4 pounds. And, okay, she's pointing at lymphedema as a culprit. Now, I get where she's coming from. I don't completely trust the number on the scale because, one more time, weight is the effect of gravity on mass. That's the literal definition through physics. I had a science teacher in grade 10, and he always hated Weight Watchers. He said they should be called mass minders because that's what you're actually losing is mass, not weight. And that's also the source of my joke that if Amber were on Mars, she would weigh 198 pounds. So, lymphedema causes your legs to swell. That is very true. And I have never weighed myself in the various stages of lymphedema, but I would be hard pressed to say that there wasn't a difference between when the swelling is up and my legs are really badly swollen and when the swelling comes down when I've been off them for a while. I will agree with her with that. So here's something interesting about cellulitis and lymphedema. I had a rather bad case of it. If you go back and you look at my monster fat videos, you'll see I was really sick. She does accurately describe the difference between kind of when it's not too bad and you can catch it and go get some antibiotics versus when you're really badly off. And I do take a bit of an issue with people who think that lymphedema is maybe not real, or maybe just an excuse, or just, you have it because you're fat. Because there have been women who have died from the Red Sox, okay? So, and it was because people told them, oh, there's nothing wrong with you, just go home. There's nothing wrong with you. If you go, there's a website called bigfatlegs.com, and there's a story there about a woman. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. But she had and we call it the Red Sox, because what happens is your lower leg gets very red. It's very warm to the touch, and it hurts. And you do have other symptoms. Just general feel like crap. Kind of flu-like symptoms. Feel a little bit dizzy, a little bit, flu-y. And actually the first time I had it, I thought I had the flu. I really did. Now, I'm weird in that no matter, I can be in the deathly throes of an infection, and for some reason I don't run a temperature. The way I know I have a fever is that I get a chill across my back, and I feel kind of clammy, but my temperature, you take my temperature, it's always bang on perfect. It is the weirdest thing. I never have an elevated body temperature, no matter how hot and clammy and sweaty I feel. So, little fun fact, little weird medical miracle for me. And that's one of the reasons that I sometimes do have trouble convincing people that, yes, I am sick. Yes, I do need antibiotics. But anyway, so back to this particular woman. She had the redness in her leg. She went to ER, and they told her there's nothing wrong with you, go home. And she said to her husband, no, there is something seriously wrong. I can feel it. I don't know what it is. I need to get treatment. She goes back to the ER. They sent her home. They said, there's nothing wrong with you. The third time, she said goodbye to her husband. She said, I don't know why they're not helping me, but there is something seriously wrong, and she died. Okay. Yeah, it can be a serious infection. It can turn septic. Or like me, what happened was, it was something that I had battled for some time. So in 2022, I had the Red Sox, and I had 2 little wounds underneath my knee, and they kind of started as, I called it a protuberance, because it just looked up like a bump, almost like a blood blister. And then that broke and turned into a wound, and then a second small wound opened up beside it. And I finally went to ER. And what happens there is they start the IV, and then I have to either go to the clinic and get a bag change once a day, or because of all the provincial cutbacks, thank you, Bergie Farad, they actually had a thing where I unplug the IV and I actually have to change my own IV bag, if you can believe it. So that was in 2022, and that was also where I was at my highest weight. And about a year later, so that was in August of 2022, and then September 2023, I got that protuberance in the same spot again. And it opened up, got really gross, and I thought, and I had just started a new job, and I just generally didn't feel well, so I didn't want to go anywhere. So it took me a couple of months to actually go and get treatment. Yes, it was foolish of me. Now, what is interesting, kind of putting the pieces together, is that maybe I was sicker than I thought I was. There was a day in September when I had the same symptoms as I had in June when I ended up in the hospital. I had this deep, deep, deep chill, and I was shivering, and my teeth were chattering for like 2 hours. I could not get warm, and all I wanted to do was just pull my covers over my head and go back to sleep. And I ended up calling in sick, and I'd only been working at the place for like not even a month at that point. And then there was a second incident in November, and at the same time I also had this kind of ongoing cold flu, possibly COVID thing going, so I just was not well. And then in November, I was sitting at my desk, and all of a sudden my vision just got these little white spots, and I couldn't see, and I was really lightheaded, and I felt like I was going to pass out. And I got the girl that sat next to me, I got her to grab the dustbin for me, and I ended up throwing, I felt so bad. Oh, it was so embarrassing. So I ended up throwing up into the dustbin. My manager and like 4 people are standing around me going, what do you want to do here? Because I was afraid that if I stood up, I was going to pass out. So I managed to kind of get up, get my head together enough to drive myself home. But by the time I got home, I was okay again for some reason. I don't know. So anyway, so I just, went to bed, and the next day I was fine. I went back to work. And I think that those 2 incidents were related to what ended up putting me in the hospital in June. Now in June, I had, or actually I should, sorry. Yes, the ghost of Amber just popped in. I'm watching the video, and I just decided to make a video reacting. So then what happened, in December, I finally went to the doctor because I was in the middle of getting evicted, and my property manager said, well, she didn't have a doctor's note saying blah, 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 blah. So I got a doctor's note that says, with active cellulitis, if she is evicted, she could die. Like, that's what the letter says. But of course, they didn't care. They still kicked me out in January in Ontario. So I got some antibiotics at that time, but they were oral antibiotics because I went to the clinic instead of to the ER. And the infection seemed to kind of go away, but I still had the wound on my leg. And then I was just kind of changing the dressings and not really paying any mind to it. Finished the course of antibiotics, kind of went along my way. But then in June, again, I had the same symptoms. I was out shopping with my nephew, and it wasn't that cold out. It was 17 degrees Celsius, which works out to like in the 60s. And I just got this deep, deep chill, and I started shaking, and my teeth were chattering, and I couldn't get warm. And I thought maybe I had a low blood sugar, so I ate a couple of cookies and a couple of those Lunchable, just the crackers and meat, and I actually ended up throwing that up too. Not good. And I went and I looked in the mirror, and I said, oh, I don't look good. My face was gray and my lips were purple. So my sister, she's like, no, you're not you're not staying. You're going to the hospital. Because all I wanted to do was just curl up and go to bed. I just did not feel well. And twice already I had beaten it, right? Because I just thought, I'm going to go to bed, take a nap, I'll wake up okay. No. Didn't work out that way, so we got an ambulance. And I went to the hospital and they ended up admitting me. And it's actually a good thing that they did, because my leg at that point, and I realized that my leg kind of hurt. And then I realized, oh, I've got cellulitis. And my leg got so swollen. And there's actually some video here on the channel that my foot didn't fit in my shoe. You can see my skin's really shiny, and the liquid started coming out my skin because it had backed up so badly. And they told me that I went into right side heart failure, because what happens is your fluid kind of backs up and your body stops processing it. But here's the interesting thing, and what I wanted to comment about, because as Omegon says to Amber, you stepped in a puddle and you gained weight? You're not a sponge. When I had the lymphedema, I actually had lost 50 pounds between what I weighed in 2022 and what I weighed when I went in the hospital in 2024. So, and I hadn't actually started to lose weight until I started my new job in September 2023. So it was about 10 months. I mean, it was a slow weight loss, but yes, I was down 50 pounds. And then even with my leg being super swollen, I was in the hospital for 3 weeks, and it was better by the time they released me. And then about a month later, I was still off work, went to my doctor, got weighed, and I was down another 30 pounds. Now, that I think actually was fluid going away, because my leg wasn't as swollen as it was. But, yeah, you can lose weight if you have swollen legs from lymphedema. You can't use lymphedema as an excuse for gaining weight. And what allowed me to lose weight was I was eating less. I was eating way less junk food than I normally eat. Because basically, my previous job, I loved it. It was a fantastic job, but I worked nights for 22 years, and I would get fast food on the way to work, and I would sit there with an entire box of cookies, the chips, the cheesecake, whatever I wanted, and I would just sit with it in front of me. And I'd have treats with my coffee, and that's what I would do all night. And if I had a box of cookies, I would eat it all. And so when I got my new job, number one, everything was further to walk. So it was further to get from my car to my desk. It was further to get from my desk to the bathroom. It was further to get to the lunchroom from my desk. And I quite often, because I had timed breaks, I didn't have time to eat when I was on shift. Or if I did, it was a very small, very quick lunch. I often didn't have time for breakfast in the morning. So a lot of the time, even though I would still eat fast food at night, that would be all that I was eating. So if you want to eat what you want only in moderation, you really have to moderate. Okay? Go to Subway, get a 6-inch lean meal, no mayo, no cheese, and a diet pop. Maybe an apple, but no chips, no cookies, no whatever. Get a small Happy Meal, not a 20-pack of Chicken McNuggets. Right, this is how you modify a fast food diet. Where was I going with that? And again, I'm not saying I'm better than Amber. I'm just saying that I lost weight with lymphedema. Amber can't use that as an excuse. And I am fully transparent. I have been gaining weight back because I've been, go figure, because I've been off work, I've been eating the dollar store cookies again. I've been living on fast food, right? Until you give that stuff up, you're not going to be successful in weight loss. And I'm not either. I'm not here to judge Amber. I'm not here to give anybody diet advice, because I have the world's worst eating habits, but I'm honest about mine. But the truth is, what helped me lose 50 pounds last year was really seriously changing my eating habits. Intermittent fasting, drinking lots of water, walking more, and when the days that I don't eat, actually the swelling goes down. That's one of those kind of things that you have to choose as a food addict. Being uncomfortable not eating, or all the pain and infection of the lymphedema. And I can't make that choice for anybody, but eventually Amber is going to get to a point where she doesn't want to be that anymore. At least I hope she will. And she has to ask herself, what it's worth to her, right? Is a chocolate bar worth your life? And I have that same question to ask myself every day. And that's one of the reasons that, because she's still eating crap and making up excuses like, well, I'm just going to want it more if I deny myself this privilege of, that's another thing. You have to, food is the gas you put in the car to make it go, nothing else. You can't lift food up to this vaunted position. It's not the greatest thing ever. It's not your entertainment. It's not how you pass your time. It's not your reward for yourself. It's not, you have to separate all of that. And this is the stuff you have to work through with a therapist to really, truly change your relationship with food. And until you're ready to do that, until you're ready to put food in its place, none of this is going to change. You have to make those choices, and that's what adults do. An adult doesn't say, oh, well, of course I'm just going to have that cookie because I deserve that cookie. No, you don't need that cookie. An adult says to themselves, of course I can have that cookie, but I don't need that cookie right now. I don't want that cookie right now because I have something else to do. And this is how thin people think too. Thin people don't sit there and think about cookies all the time, or start chomping on carrots and thinking about chips. Thin people are hungry, they get something to eat, they have a drink of water, and then they go off and do something else. Believe it or not. And this is one of the ways that fat people and thin people actually think differently, right? So as fat people, as food addicts, we don't do moderation. This is why we're fat, and this is why we're food addicts. So we're basically in a car with no brakes, and we're going off the cliff. So we have to figure that out as adults, and we have to fix that as adults. And you know what, Amber, you're 34 years old, and you've already said you're going through a second childhood, but now it's time to stop. Is it worth your life? And every time you sit down to eat that stuff, you're going to have to ask yourself that question. And so do I. Again, I'm not judging Amber for this. I make the same bad choices. But I'm also not out here trying to be a weight loss influencer or trying to be an inspiration to anybody. I'm just trying to make better choices. Because I'm 50, okay? And I've already had one scare where I went into heart failure and I could have died. It's not worth my life. I don't know. That's a little perspective about lymphedema and weight loss, and hopefully the next phase of my life will be a little bit better, and I'll be able to make some better choices. And just shout out to all the Amber reactors out there who've said a lot about Amber's bad food choices, but a lot of people haven't said so much about how she has to change her thinking before she can change her behaviors, and how lymphedema is kind of an excuse, but from the perspective of somebody who has it, I get it. I get why it's an easy excuse. So anyway, thought I'd give you my perspective. I hope you're having a great day. Hope you're, taking your meds, having your walks, drinking your water, and May is coming. Spring is here. Let's get better together. Bye.